welcome back to class. We are at the last class of the 353 of Scrum, talking about the 3 roles, the 5 events, and the 3 artifacts. And the third artifact is product increment. Okay, when we look at the picture on the screen, we would observe that we have products delivered in bits. This is an increment. This is another increment. This is another increment. This is another in that order. So these are values delivered sprint in, sprint out. So we could assume that this was delivered in sprint 1, this in sprint 2, this in sprint 3, this in sprint 4, this in sprint 5, and this in sprint 6. Right? So going by what we have on this picture, we could see all of them coming together to form a whole piece. Let me see if we can identify a few of them. Okay, can we? I believe this green piece should be this one on this, right? And the next one should be this 3 tiles, and so in that order, on and on and on. This one looks anyways. So the idea of what I'm making here, if we had been able to see the entire picture, we would be able to drive out from what we have on the screen that as values are delivered sprint in, sprint out, we have those values coming together. So what you need to note about the product increment itself is the value building up. That is what we call the product increment, the value building up. It's not just about a piece of value delivered in a sprint, but the value being added to other deliverables. So let's say in our illustration, talking about building the house, if this was delivered in first sprint and foundation was delivered in the second sprint, so your product increment at the first sprint is the approver, but your product increment in your second sprint is approver plus foundation. So if block 1 was delivered in the third sprint, your increment would be the block wall being added to what was delivered and in previous sprints. So it begins to grow, value begins to improve, value begins to grow in that order until every piece of that is delivered. So let's look at what the product increment is all about. Firstly, it's about the potentially shippable piece of that product. In a nutshell, product increment talks about value. Value must be delivered. When it's not value, then it is not a product increment. So a product increment is not after the end of the sprint, we have been able to do this. What you've been able to do must be valuable, must be quantifiable, right? You know, while we talked about the sprint planning, we use the inverse criteria, looking at valuable, must be estimable, must be small and testable. So at the end of that sprint, we want to see the value we committed to developing at the beginning of the sprint. We want to see it delivered at the end of the sprint. So product increment is about value that has been delivered or that has been created. And of course, that is what is shippable. That is what is tangible. Of course, that's what we're explaining here. So in the product increment, it has that benefit of giving us a feedback. When the stakeholder comes around and sees the soakaway and the septic tank that had been dug in the previous sprint and in this sprint that had now been laid with blocks, they can now give you feedback on the value that has been delivered. A product increment must focus on quality. It's not just running to deliver value. It is not value actually if it lacks quality. So it must come with quality. You shouldn't sacrifice quality on the altar of speed. Quality in Agile, in Scrum, is very important. And when talking about product increment also, it must be a value that must be demonstrable. I've explained that earlier. In addition, that value must align with the requirements. So you need to be sure that you are delivering what the end users want, what the stakeholders want, or what they gave at the beginning is what you are delivering. At the beginning of a sprint, the stakeholder ask you to lay some block walls. Now at the end of the sprint, they got back and you were now giving showing what you've delivered as clearing a new portion of land. No, it is the requirement as given that value must align with, and that goes further to the next one. Value created must be what the stakeholder wants. Agile is customer centric. Your development cycles, your development stages is ensuring that what the stakeholders or end users or business or management want is what you are delivering. And I've explained to us earlier that value is incremental. It continues to build from layer to layer to layer until the entire product backlog is converted into a product that is fully developed. And that will be all for this class. If you have any question or you need us to expand or any area you want us to dig deeper in, please reach across and I'll be glad to do that. See you in the next class.